everyone. Welcome back to episode 7 now of Valorem Visions. And today we have Val, who is in our data and AI practice, to talk about Fabric, Ontology, and becoming AI ready. Val, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Andrew. I'm Val. I work on the data and AI team at Valorem Reply. I have been working on various flavors of data and AI for pretty much my entire career, and I've been at Valorem Reply for almost 4 years now.
Awesome. Congratulations. 4 years
Thanks.
is a good amount of time at a company. As we do, we introduce topics with using our Valorem Visions board. So if you bring up a whiteboard, and what I'll ask you to do is we'll put a minute on the timer and basically just kind of draw out what we're going to talk about today in kind of a visual way. And once you get that up, we'll start the timer. Stick figures, stickers, whatever you want to use, all on the board for this. We're not painting beautiful pictures, so have fun with it and go ahead and bring it up and we'll get started.
Okay, I'm glad you said it didn't need to be beautiful.
It's actually a big test on how well your math skills are.
Okay, so this is, I have the wrong, where's the drawing? This guy?
Yep.
All right.
You're good. All right, now we're cruising.
All right, so this is a scissors, in case you can't tell. This is a knife.
I like it so far. It's looking
This
good.
is a tweezers. This was our old world of tools about 3 years ago, before Fabric came along, really 2 years ago. Now drawing, I don't know if you can see, that's like a knife. There's your scissors, your tweezer. This is a Swiss Army knife. And so this is kind of how I like to think about my life after Fabric. So these were the tools that we used previously that required their own provisioning, their own licensing, their own training, right? Like there were a lot of different tools that you had to learn to become a data engineer, to
Sure.
become a data analyst. But I think what happened now, I don't know how much time I have left on my timer, is we've got a world of semantic models, and all these semantic models are operating from this single source of truth, but one department may call something a customer. Well, I really cannot even write with the mouse. And then another department might call that customer a client. Then you've got your IT department. Here, I'll give you a stick figure like everyone else that calls that guy a user.
Sure.
And that's an overly simplified example, but we wind up with this fragmented vocabulary in many organizations. Even though they've unified their data, they've got different reporting for different areas of the business and different functionalities. And it can become very disjointed and sort of disunified because of the naming and the culture and the function of different departments.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So really what you're talking about, right, is Fabric, and basically it collapses silos, right? Where each one of your tools on the left may have been an individual person with that specialization. And now as data engineers come up through these platforms, they can understand all of these and actually have a centralized platform that helps combine all of those tools into a centralized place where you can manage it and focus and deliver things to clients more easily.
Exactly.
Perfect. So as we talk about collapsing data silos and unifying all the data into a single SaaS platform, historically different engineering and reporting tools operated, as you kind of discussed. How is this helping clients as we implement Fabric and think about collapsing those data silos?
So they can get their data as streamlined as they wish. One of the things that actually confused me a little bit when I was first learning Microsoft Fabric is that it was a unified data platform, single source of truth, but then there was all of this documentation about the traditional medallion architecture that you
Sure.
hear about
Yep.
in data
You hear it
engineering.
everywhere. Yep.
And it's so in some future demos, I have planned. I've actually got one single source of truth to tell people so they don't have that same confusion, to say, hey, you can actually have literally like one source. You can consolidate everything as much as you want. But if you want to continue to adhere to best practices, you want to have that bronze landing zone, and then the silver cleanse zone, and then your gold curated zone. So you would have those different data engineering zones, but then each area of business is still, whether you're sourcing your data from like unstructured sources, 6 different connections, you're still just getting it out of the lake house or the warehouse. You don't have to set up linked services and databases and all those other things from the old world that require just so much overhead, so much maintenance, such a simpler environment.
Yeah, having a single platform where, as we all know in organizations, right, people need different data in different transformation layers and how they access it, and having that kind of central platform to enable whoever needs what data is all managed in a central place, and you have that kind of source of truth, and things aren't getting updated from the outside. And now when another department is accessing it, or user group, as you kind of put the customer, client, and the user, it's more easily managed behind all of that, right? So everyone's reading from this unified source, which I can imagine and have seen through clients, right, is a big game changer. So what types of issues, even though we're all consolidated, that you kind of see that's happening now, as we all know AI is coming in and data is even more important, and having it organized in a central way? What kind of issues are you seeing, even though now all the data is unified?
Well, so the Fabric data agents were introduced, I think, last spring, and they work really, really well against like a single semantic model straight out of the box, like impressively well. There's not a whole lot that is required in terms of like instructions or configuration. I mean, you have to put in a few just remedial steps. I was blown away and, thinking maybe I needed a new career because it seemed like it could put people out of work. It was so impressive. But where it struggled was terminology that differed across departments. So like when we talk about customer versus client versus user, if my table is called client and my fact table has client ID, if I would come in and start asking about users, I could eventually get the agent to give me what I wanted, but it required instructions, sample queries, or both. Or one of the other things that we tried when working for a particular client was creating multiple data agents and then hooking them up to a Copilot Studio agent and having it try to orchestrate between the two agents based on whether or not the user asked about a customer, client, etc. So the integration just kind of became difficult and cumbersome. But at a department level, the agents were still pretty powerful and pretty useful.
So explain to me a little bit. So if everyone is reading from a unified source now, what is still causing that different languages, as you kind of spoke, or different terminology for things?
So when you build your reporting gold curated layer, the best practice is to name your fields what the people in the business actually call the fields, so that the reports make more sense, the measures make more sense, Copilot and Power BI works better, but the interdepartment queries can become cumbersome that way. So that's why I was pretty excited to learn about Ontology.
Sure. It's funny, and I come from the dev world, the engineering side, and we've always joked about, and it's an ongoing thing in industry, is like the hardest part about programming is actually naming variables and naming things, right? Because what you think is a good name, someone interprets entirely differently, and tries to use it in a different way than it intended, just based off of the name, right? And so, great. So you mentioned ontology. So talk to us a little bit about this new ontology and how it's bridging that gap.
Okay, so it's new functionality. It is part of the Fabric IQ workload, which is a new workload. They've also, data agents are considered part of that workload, and I believe they're still considered part of the data science workload as well. So
Mm.
they kind of cross over. But I watched a lot of videos about ontology. I read through everything on Learn. And at first, I wasn't completely intrigued because I thought it was perhaps a data dictionary.
Sure. Yeah.
But once I went in and actually walked through the demos to have an understanding, I realized it could solve the problem that I had run into of these larger organization wide integration business questions that the data agents couldn't easily answer without a lot of configuration or training or creativity.
Yeah.
So when I set it up, I realized like it's not just a data dictionary. It's not a data dictionary at all. It's naming the entities, the fields, the properties, and most importantly, the relationships. So typically, I'm just been accustomed to your relationship is one to many, many to one, but you're actually providing those names when you create an ontology, and it uses those names to create nodes and events in a graph database. And then your agent knows the names of those relationships, and it knows all the names of your entities and your property. And so your agent can be much more empowered to make decisions without as much configuration, without as much training, without as much example queries and instructions.
Sure. So it's more of just hearing you talk about it, it seems more of, I'll say, kind of like a context engine for agents, right? It's helping them understand the data and the intention of the data more clearly to help them be autonomous when you're asking questions and sift through the data. Would that be kind of correct?
Exactly.
Perfect. So it's not just labeling data, it's kind of aligning how departments interpret and then connect it, and even more so, providing that context for agents to be able to sift through it autonomously. So, kind of go deeper into it seemed, because I'm guessing you've been in the industry for a long time, and if your outset thought, well, this is just a data dictionary, can you dive a little bit deeper into kind of the differences if others are kind of looking into this ontology, which correct me if I'm wrong, this is still kind of a preview thing. Okay. So it's not full GA yet, but you can enable it and use it today?
Yes, there are quite a few. I'd have to go out to Learn too because I don't even have it memorized. There are quite a few permission boxes that you have to check as the Fabric Capacity Administrator to be allowed to use it.
Got it.
And there's a decent sized list of limitations. And I expect, when it eventually becomes generally available for those limitations to kind of diminish.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks for that. So really, how is it different from a traditional data dictionary?
It actually is attaching your objects in Fabric, and it's putting names on the relationships versus just being a mapping between fields. So if someone comes in and asks the agent about a particular transaction, regardless of the way they refer to that transaction, the agent should understand.
Got it. So it's not just a pointer, really. It's a new structure and classification.
Exactly.
Okay. So awesome. So we're excited about this. Everybody loves it. It's going to unlock everything and provide all the data insights you'd ever want. So what happens really after you create this ontology?
You feed it to your agent. You have your graph database that can be used for APIs and just basically operate much more efficiently.
Okay, great. Is there a lot of what you've seen so far? And I know obviously with preview things, it's constantly changing until it's GA, but from an operational, because as we all know, when new features get rolled out, like it does solve a problem, but sometimes there's more overhead and management to it that makes it seem encumbersome, or hey, it's not as easy to implement in something that's already running. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit on what's the ease of enabling this? What did you see from an overall management perspective as you've dove into figuring out ontology and how it works?
So just depending on how many organizations and how many workspaces you have, if you're already established in using Fabric, I believe there would be a time investment upfront in setting it up because the ontology knows what, well, I shouldn't say it only knows what you tell it. It does try to figure out some of your fields and relationships for you, but you still have to approve it. It doesn't do the whole thing like magic.
Sure.
If you if you're setting up a new Fabric capacity from scratch, it wouldn't be that bad to just do it as you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got a lot out there, it would be a time investment for sure.
Got it. And then is it when implementing, is it a major structure change? We mentioned it's kind of a more of a structural change. Is it something that you can just enable and while you're building it out, like it doesn't affect anything, or is it something that you actually have to plan for and implement and get it rolled out entirely before utilizing it?
So it doesn't break anything any of the objects that you have that are out there. I guess I would say it uses a decent amount of capacity.
Got it.
And
That's
so
the
that
key
would be
thing.
something to plan for. Yes.
Got it. So you may have to, it's less on the implementation, more about just planning your current license capacity in the moment and taking that into account.
Yes. And I probably should note it requires a paid Fabric capacity to even use it. So if you're operating on a Fabric trial just to kind of kick the tires, you won't be able to use it. Data agents are the same way. You have to have a paid SKU. It could even just be as small as an F2 to use a data agent, but you can't use a trial and use data agents. And same with Ontology. Ontology, the official documentation says you need an F2. I personally think it would, practically speaking, need to be larger.
Sure. Awesome. No, that's great insight. And for people who are probably already thinking about using this in preview and, or at least planning, right, from a business strategy on being able to be prepared for when this does go GA. So we've talked about how it enables agents and prepares your data for better utilization of agents. So what kind of optimizations have you seen with the data agents that you've seen, whether it's less training, faster deployment of agents compared to not when you're not using ontology? What does that kind of look like as we talk about AI?
So Ontology is really pretty new. So I haven't had a ton of industry experience, but you basically do not need to provide the same level of training for an agent to stand it up. So you could really roll out less agents that do more quickly rather than to have 6 individual agents, each one curated to your specific department and then have to orchestrate between them, or one agent that required, months of training to get it to understand all these departments.
No, that's great because when you're thinking about, well, as you mentioned earlier, like, shoot, I have to increase my fabric capacity. There's a cost in that, but you're also thinking about, okay, well, if I am going to use data agents inside of this, you might offset the cost where if you hadn't implemented it and you had to create multiple agents, do all the training, et cetera, you're probably somewhat in the same ballpark potentially.
That's a really good point.
Awesome. When do you know when this is looking to go GA? Is there
I
any
do
roadmap that
not
you know?
know.
Yeah,
Probably a while because I think the preview wasn't that long ago.
got it. So what are I'm curious just from data engineering side, what could people be doing now to kind of prepare for when this does go GA to make that transition a little bit easier that you've seen in your discovery?
I mean, I would say work through the tutorials, ensure that your workspaces are organized. Try it out maybe like in a couple workspaces and then get together a plan. Like if your organization doesn't want to use it until it's GA, because it's out there and you can work through and just learn about it right now.
Sure. Awesome. So we've kind of talked about a couple things in here, right? One, overall, just moving into Fabric or any of those, right, is solving a unified data access issue in industry, right? And when we're now thinking about the AI revolution that we're all in, right, is where that solved, just being in a unified space solved a lot of issues of the silos that we were dealing in industry. Now it's almost a unified data isn't enough. You got to take it into that next step to being able to actually be able to add context to what you're doing so you can enable these features. I think about it in the engineering side as all these instruction files for utilizing AI, right? How do you get it to understand the context and be able to provide you the best answer? Because not doing these things and utilizing AI, as probably most of us have seen so far, is introducing more technical debt, and then it becomes more overhead. But at the same time, most companies being slow to adopt AI are going to fall way behind in not doing this. So it isn't something that we can just say, hey, this is a trend, this is a fad, we're gonna wait it out. We've got to figure out these methodologies to be able to accelerate AI adoption, right? In a safe, understandable way, obviously. So what are some kind of closing thoughts that you would have on Fabric and a unified database and strategies like Ontology when thinking about implementing AI over our data?
I think just anything you can do to govern your data, govern your environment will help to ensure that you have less hallucinations and that your security is easier.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you, Val. Great episode. I appreciated your insights on this. I always love, technology is not slowing down whatsoever, and even more so today. So really getting ahead of these preview features and understanding where industry and technology is going to better ease the adoption is always a great topic. And I look forward to future discovery inside of this as we get closer to GA on this and really what we see inside of companies and how we can help them implement and streamline their data. And not only that, but their data agent access as well. What are any final closing thoughts from your side?
No, I think I covered them.
Awesome. Well, if you want more information, obviously you can always go to our website, Valorem Reply. As these topics come out, I know we're talking more about a preview feature, but obviously you can see we are always exploring these new innovative features that are coming out. And as they come, be sure to check into the website to see one-pagers, offers, etc. around these. And if there's ever any questions, you can always reach and ask questions via the website or inquiry or via socials. So yeah, again, Val, appreciate your time and thanks again for diving into Ontology and how it's moving more towards the AI enablement.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me as a guest, Andrew.
Yeah, take care.